Hey everybody, I'm Fox with FoxeoGames, and this is Undertale on the PC. Now, just looking at Undertale's screenshots and videos on Steam, I'd probably never bother to purchase this title. After all, it looks like one of those dime-a-dozen RPG Maker type retro games. Well, obviously it's not one of those, since it stood out to such a degree that many have heralded it as the best game of the year, or even their favorite game of all time. Given the critical acclaim this game was receiving by such a wide variety of gamers from all different perspectives, I just had to give it a shot. I waited for a good Steam sale and nabbed it. As a busy reviewer with a full-time job and other social obligations, that's wife, I don't always get to complete the games I review. I understand that it's best to finish the game for a review, but as long as I clarify this in the review, I feel okay about it. Your opinion may of course differ. I did not complete Undertale. Yes, I know, many of you adore this game and will insist that I need to complete it before I really evaluate it, but I disagree, and let me explain why. Given that reviewing is not my full-time job, and given my limited free time, I'm forced to pick and choose carefully which games I want to play. As a general rule of thumb, I won't continue to play a game if I'm not getting some genuine value out of it. So with that, you kinda see where this review is going, maybe, but let's knock out some of the basic review categories first. Undertale is not a console port, but as a PC title, it's exceptionally minimalist and feels a bit unpolished on the technical side of things. The game launches in this tiny little window, and if you want a better experience than that, your only choice is to go full screen. There are few options, and the game is entirely keyboard driven, with support for the Xbox 360 and Xbox One controllers. I did not test any other controllers. Unfortunately, the prompts are keyboard only, so if you're using a controller, you're just gonna have to know which buttons those keyboard controls are mapped to. The game plays in 4:3 aspect ratio, which doesn't really help anything. Despite how retro 4:3 might be, it just feels wrong to have giant black bars on the sides of your widescreen display. The game also crashed once when I attempted to exit. The graphics in Undertale certainly aren't going to tax your system. After all, my graphics card rarely exceeded 1% usage. And granted, Undertale isn't about that. It's about art direction and story. The visuals in this game form a cohesive, charming retro aesthetic that fits the atmosphere and story in the game quite nicely. While some areas look exceedingly minimalist to the point that they feel a bit unfinished, these are the exception rather than the norm. Plain backgrounds are common, but you'll hardly notice it given what's going on in the foreground. Simple as best is the rule here, and like I mentioned, it all fits together quite well. The sound effects in the game fit the art direction. They have a, again, minimalist retro feel to them. Simple sounds permeate throughout the game, even little noises for text when characters are talking. Unfortunately, some of these can sound a bit grating over time, particularly given how loud the game is by default. The music in this game has been praised to no end, and I have to agree that a lot of these tracks are downright amazing. Some of the songs have a more retro 16-bit chiptune style, while others sound a little bit more modern. A few songs here and there are overly simplistic and sound like the developer forgot to finish them before release. Just like the graphics, the sound and music all come together to fit the aesthetic and atmosphere of the game, a finely tuned, well-executed synergy of elements. The story in Undertale, just like the music, has received no shortage of praise and adoration. Charming characters abound, each one having their own cutesy and compelling personalities. Many of them will make jokes and puns, sometimes drawing attention to themselves for having done so. A lot of the game seems to be lightheartedly poking fun at games and culture in general. You never know where the game will take you, and you'll often be surprised by deceptive little twists and turns along the way. I think it's abundantly clear that the game's charming story, visuals, music, and character dialogue are all meant to draw you in and make you care about the world of Undertale, and for many gamers, it has done that in spades. Onto the gameplay. Once again, Undertale shows a powerful synergy of elements here. This could have been just another menu-driven JRPG clone, but instead you have a uniquely complex and novel system at your disposal. When you encounter an enemy, either by bumping into them on the map or from a random encounter, you can choose to fight them like in a traditional RPG, in which you must try to get a moving bar closest to the center of the graphic as possible to get the most damage. When enemies attack you, they initiate any number of interesting little encounters that function almost as mini-games. You'll be moving a little heart around to dodge any number of unique projectiles, from tears and raindrops to bones and swords. Some encounters completely change the system up, leaving you wondering what will come up next. I don't want to say too much here, as I would be spoiling some of the fun for you. The other aspect to combat are your actions, which include cutesy and charming things like talking to your opponent, complimenting them, trying to scare them, or even showing them mercy. It's possible to smooth talk or bully your way out of fights without throwing out a single attack. Needless to say, you'll need to decide for yourself how you want each encounter to go, and there are different rewards based on what you do. You can level up and acquire more powerful armor and weaponry as well. Apart from enemy encounters, you'll be spending much of your time solving mostly simple environmental puzzles. I found that I generally wasn't stumped for more than a few minutes at most, and they are a good combination of challenging without being frustrating. I don't think you should find yourself hopelessly stuck on any of these, since I'm terrible at these puzzles and I was able to figure out every single one that I encountered. Expect many of the puzzles to be as equally charming and cute as the characters you meet. So what's the verdict? Well, I'm genuinely a little nervous saying this because I know how much people love this game, but it just doesn't appeal to me. Yes, I think the story, characters, art direction, and music all have a unique and well-blended charm, but it's just not my thing. The combat was interesting for a while, but I quickly got tired of it, despite the little twists I encountered. I found myself starting to skip through character dialogue as quick as I could read. If you've ever played a Nintendo game like Animal Crossing, then you should have a good idea of how wordy the game can be. A lot of the dialogue, while very well written, just seemed superfluous and unnecessary. Ultimately, it had too much flavor text for my taste, and I found myself just mashing the button to get through a lot of it. As I mentioned earlier, I just wasn't compelled to finish the game. I pushed through several hours hoping it would suddenly grip me and keep me hooked until the end, and it didn't. I'm sure the ending is fascinating, and might pull a sudden little twist or interesting turn that you wouldn't expect, but I just don't feel like playing the rest of the game. Some people will argue that you have to keep going, but why would I do that? If a game isn't compelling me to keep playing after several hours, that's enough for me. I'm just done with it at that point. I will say that Undertale is definitely going to be a great experience for many, and we've already seen that. As I said earlier, some people are heralding it as the best game ever made. Personally, I think once the charm of the game wears off, it'll be remembered fondly but a little more reasonably in the grand scheme of gaming. If you're watching this and think Undertale looks interesting, definitely give it a shot. There's a free demo available on the PC. Personally, I didn't really like it that much. As always, I'm Fox with FoxeoGames. Feel free to subscribe for more reviews and gaming commentary, and give the video a like if you liked it. Leave your comments below, and don't forget to check the description to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Steam, or any number of other social media sites. I'll see you around.